Benjamin, you spent 25 years in the Air Force, rose to lieutenant colonel, deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, staffed at the Pentagon. On Veterans Day, you walked into a hospital and told the nurse you wanted to die. When did you realize the military was giving you purpose, but not meaning?
It's a good question. So I joined the military at the age of 20, and I actually think it was the best decisions I ever did. I was a very lost young man. I was floundering, and all of a sudden when I was in the military, I had structure, I had discipline, I had people holding me accountable. And so basic training was a rite of passage that honestly I kind of wish every young man could get. I learned, I can do hard things. My behavior impacts everybody around me. And for the first time, there was a sense of mission. The mission was given to me, but it was still a sense of mission. So I actually look back on the military as such a formative and positive experience for the most part. But to be in the military, you also have to play a role. And I think for me, I played the role of military officer for so long, I thought it was me. I kind of got lost in the role, if that makes sense. And in playing that role, I think I abandoned a lot of parts of myself. I think I abandoned the part of me that was creative or that had big emotions and feelings, or that frankly is a little bit of a rebel and an oddball. And so all those parts that were kind of central to me, I was pushing them down and pushing them down. And I think after 25 years, all that stuff I was pushing down really wanted to come out. Although I loved my time in the military, I loved being a military leader, I had to be me at the end of the day. And so I think that suppression of who I was and that suppression of a lot of emotions just became this thing that needed to come out. And I wasn't allowing it to come out and didn't know how to let it come out. So it manifested in depression, it manifested in sleep disorders. And at the end of my career, it manifested in just not caring anymore. So I retired as a lieutenant colonel. I was supposed to be a colonel. I'd gone to war college. I expected to go on to be a group commander, but I just fell apart instead. And nobody needs a colonel who's falling apart. So I quietly retired. And the retirement gave me some space to finally answer the question, well, how the hell do I heal myself? And fortunately, plant medicine came along, and that was exactly the medicine I needed. I think what really brought me to that darkest place is actually one thing. It was loss. So I lost my father to cancer. I lost my career and reputation to depression and apathy, and was in the process of losing my marriage because I felt disconnected from my wife. So oh my God, everything I'd built up my whole life all disappeared so quickly. Like Job, right? Family, career, reputation, and, in leaving a marriage, also a lot of, wealth that I've accumulated. So everything kind of got stripped away from me. And that sounds like a terrible thing, but what a gift. Because when everything is taken from you, you have the chance to rebuild. And I think psychedelics found me at exactly the right time to kind of clear the slate and, live in a new way.
Mm-hmm. Super interesting. Yeah, changes seem to happen multiple changes seem to happen at one time. It isn't just one change. It just affects you changing your relationship, career, identity, reputation, how people see you. And it seems to me that in most transitions from when people change, there are multiple things changing at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested in you in the military and then you today that sits here. Was it a cut and clear process? I know you tried a lot in between the space where you dropped the military and found psychedelics, right?
Yeah, there was a space of probably 2 years between when I retired from the military before I found plant medicine. And in those 2 years, I was kind of in this in-between place. I was working here and there in the military industrial complex as a consultant. I was trying therapy. I actually tried ketamine before I tried plant medicine. It didn't work for me. I was even looking at ECT, what is that, electrocardiography, something. It's shock treatment, right? Like if you've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right? It's that severe. So like that's how desperate I was. And I was trying everything that our mainstream medical system would suggest for depression. And I thought, well, going into the hospital and like raising my hand and saying, I want to die. I have depression. I have suicidalation. Help me. Like I thought that's the Hail Mary. Certainly this will get their attention and they'll be able to help me. Nope. When I left the hospital after 3 days, they gave me a bottle of pills. I've already taken these same damn pills before. They don't work. And a prescription to go see a therapist. I'd seen so many therapists. Nothing works. And so if the most powerful country in the world, the most powerful veteran support system, if all of the medical knowledge that we have in this world can't help me, what the fuck? So out of that disillusionment with the medical system and with the VA, there was this realization, oh, I guess I have to do this myself. Nobody's coming to save me. I got to be my own damn hero. And so from that day forward, I have never, worked again. I prioritized for the first time my health and happiness before my wife, before even like my kids, before my job, before everything. Like, okay, what if I took all my energy, all my intelligence, all my resources and poured them into healing myself? So I went into my man cave and I read and I watched all these YouTube videos. And finally, there was one YouTube video that changed my life. It was a TED Talk by Dr. Rosalind Watts, a psychiatrist from Imperial College in England, working for Dr. Carhart Harris. And the title of the TED Talk was, Can Magic Mushrooms Unlock Depression? And it was the most important video, the most important TED Talk I've ever seen in my life, because she was describing men who were just like me. One of them was actually named Ben. And she talked about this treatment-resistant depression, just like mine, where these men were unable to feel, where they felt kind of dead inside and nothing worked. And damn it, after one dose of psilocybin, high dose, a lot of them found deep relief from depression and some of them permanent relief from depression. And I thought, well, I think this might be it. Worst case, it doesn't work. Best case, this is the medicine I need. And from watching that TED Talk, I hopped on and started Googling around, well, where can I do psilocybin, magic mushrooms, in a way that feels safe? And I found a retreat center called the Sacred House of Eden that was operating out in the open as a church and a retreat center. And within 2 weeks, I was sitting in a ceremony, taking this cup of tea with 5 grams of psilocybin inside of it. And God damn it, I was right, because in one night, boom, the depression was gone. I think when we focus our minds wholeheartedly, single-mindedly on a goal, the universe wants to answer us. And so I threw my entire heart, my entire intelligence, my entire energy, desperation into this one freaking goal. How do I get inside and solve this puzzle of Ben? And with magic mushrooms, miraculously, it seemed to work. And I'm over 5 years since that fateful night when I found plant medicine, and it has been the happiest, healthiest 5 years of my life. I feel connected. I feel surrounded by love. I feel like I am on mission. I think magic mushrooms is actually the perfect name for psilocybin. This shit is magic.
Before I ask you about the first trip, you said you realized when the system failed you that it was kind of a realization that you needed to do it yourself. In that process where you was trying everything and reading and YouTube and everything, how did you feel in that in between? Were you like excited because you had the goal, or were you like, was it a blend of fear of like, I need to figure this out? Like, how were you feeling?
There was actually no fear. The military, I think, kind of molded my mind. And so leaving the psych ward, it was kind of like, okay, here's the new mission. And the way my brain was trained, okay, when there's a mission, you throw yourself completely at it, fearlessly at it, and, you execute. So my depression didn't leave after the psych ward when I went on this mission, but some excitement did come in. Like, okay, now I have a purpose. I'm not just floundering around trying to find a job that'll give me more money, because that wasn't what I needed. But like, no, to actually try to completely fucking heal myself, that found an excitement came around. The depression's still there, but there was this excitement and this energy and this optimism that came from just having a purpose, having like a drive. So did going to the psych ward help me? Indirectly, it did. The doctors and the prescriptions they gave me didn't help me, but that realization, like, oh, I gotta be my own fucking hero, and now I have a mission, and that mission's to heal myself. That was probably relieved 25% of the depression by itself, just having a purpose. Yeah.
And having the agency to actually make the plan and figure it out.
Yeah, and to be active about it. I think a lot of people are suffering in a very passive way, where they're waiting for a girlfriend or a doctor or a book or a spiritual tradition. Come save me, in this kind of passive, desperate way, which is a different energy than I have to save myself. That's a very different energy. And that second energy of I have to save myself, the body hears that, the heart hears that, the mind hears that, and it actually does kind of get to work on it. We have in our heads here the ultimate problem-solving machine. The brain is, according to science, the most complex thing we know of in the universe right now. And I do think the brain is a problem-solving machine, and it's looking for a problem. And we can either give it a specific problem or it'll go out and find one. The brain will make problems out of everything if we don't give it a specific task. So I think it's part of like the magic of life is making sure your brain always has a high quality problem to work on. Because if you aren't giving your brain a high quality problem to work on, it's going to go make problems out of bullshit.
I think that's an accurate statement, because like if you see a problem in the world that bugs you, like it's your problem. And if it's your problem, then you suddenly have interest and excitement and purpose to solve that problem for the universe, because clearly there isn't a solution to this problem. And that will make your life meaningful, understand you more, and you will be like learn more. But I think you were also accurate on terms of like so common that people look from outside sources to fill an empty self. Like something, the girlfriend, moving, money, book, somebody, hey, give it to me, it to me. Where it is actually the, like you just said, the internal work of like, I need to do this, I need to connect with. And then you go from your head, like you said, into your heart and intuition and access that. And then you will feel full on the inside. And then if external things happen, then it's a bonus to it, to your life in a sense.
Yeah, and that's the trick too. Like when the change happens inside, it seems to miraculously change the outside as well. One little example of that. So going into my first magic mushroom ceremony, at the time I was estranged from my mom. We weren't talking. And one little like side quest in that first magic mushroom journey was I kind of went into my family relationships and I kind of like unpacked my father's psyche within my own mind and unpacked my mother's personal history and psyche. And without her being present in the room or even in my life at that time, I changed my relationship to my mother, to that mental construct I had of her. And sure enough, 2 months later, my physical outwardly relationship with her completely changed. And, you know, today, 5 years later, I'm extremely close to my mom. It's the healthiest, most positive, loving place that she and I have ever been in. But I had to fix my relationship to her in here in order to fix it outside.
And the trip did that.
Yeah, the trip did that. Like, it was a complete unpacking of my psyche. So why do psychedelics work? Why do magic mushrooms work? There's a quote from Carl Jung: "Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate." So I think why psychedelics work is it is the most direct path into the subconscious. And so when I went into psychedelics that time and every time since, it's an invitation for the unconscious to come out and play, to come out. And so as I lay there in total surrender to the medicine, all the things that were causing me internal suffering were allowed to come out to the surface. Oh, here's a resentment towards my parents. Oh, here is a fear that I never allowed myself to feel. Oh, here is this well of grief that needs to come out. And I didn't know how to do it outside. I was this sort of man, like a lot of men, I could go years without ever crying. And in psilocybin, that first time, I probably spent the better part of an hour crying, like it needs to come out. So, you know, all the repressed grief comes out, all the hurt, all the sadness. And so it probably looked from the outside like an unpleasant experience. That guy looks like he's suffering. But no, that's what I needed to do. Suffering's not a bad thing. Expressing grief and sorrow and hurt and pain, like that's not a bad thing. Because once it gets out, you're free of it. It's gone. So the most simple metaphor I have around my transformation with psychedelics is emotional constipation. I think I was emotionally constipated. So I grew up in a culture, in an era where, you know, boys don't cry. You know, I'm an American man, you know. And then I joined the military. And part of joining the military is you put aside all your fear and all your doubts and you do whatever has to be done, which is great in an emergency. But like this became a way of life to never feel anything. And it all kind of builds up and your heart becomes constipated. And to complete the metaphor then, magic mushrooms were the laxative. I take the magic mushrooms, all the feelings get expressed, and then the heart is clear, the heart is open. And I don't think that's a trivial metaphor. One of my favorite books in the spiritual realm is Michael Singer's Untethered Soul. And I think you can make that entire book one sentence: keep your heart open no matter what. Mm. When we close our hearts, we're not just closing it off to the pain and fear and grief, we're closing it off to everything that makes us human. And so, yeah, we actually have to go feel that fear and pain and grief in order to feel the joy and the love and the optimism and enthusiasm. There's no mechanism in the heart that can filter just the good stuff out. And so, yeah, we have to open our hearts. We have to open our unconscious. And I haven't found a better tool beyond psychedelics.
Mm. Yeah, they seem to, both on a somatic level, like allow you to express the emotion that have been stored in your body in a sense, but also seems to, like people talk about 10 years of therapy in one session, because it gives you access and seeing things from another perspective, which makes them your meaning making of life and how you view things differently in just a smart period of time. I mean, we'll go into the integration part later, but you talked about like, it was kind of like you just, like we would switch on and off the light here of like how you felt before and after the psychedelic. Like, take me a little bit more into that. Yeah,
so my entire life feels split by one night. It's like before and after. Everything is before and after. It's split time, like, you know, the birth of Christ did on our calendar. And I became a different person that quickly. And did psychedelics change me? I prefer to say that they revealed me. They like stripped away the stuff that wasn't me. And, you know, I talked about being a military officer is like playing a role. It was, I think, an invitation too to take off the mask and to be real. So I did feel extremely transformed. To give some examples of that, so I went from, you know, being very depressed to being, you know, extremely blissful. To the point one of the gals at the retreat pointed at me and said, "I'll have what he's having," right? Because it was just so palpable. The other thing, and I'm so glad I did psychedelics in a group ceremony, because I think just as we're generally wounded in relationships, so too are we healed in relationship. I think we heal in connection to other people. So I went from being somebody who was kind of like, I don't know, sometimes grumpy and standoffish and overly judgmental around people, to being like a character in a video game who just got 5 charisma points, if I'm being honest. Like, that's what it felt like. And suddenly, like, before I could be surrounded by people and feel lonely, and now I could be completely alone physically and feel like surrounded by love. And so the way I connected to other people transformed really profoundly too. A lot of my relationships prior to psychedelics, honestly, were kind of shallow, right? But afterwards, like, even brief encounters could feel, deep and genuine and intimate. The way I related to myself, the way I related to other people, the way I related to the divine. Like, when I went into the first ceremony, I would have considered myself an atheist, and actually kind of like a bitter atheist, which is contradictory because if there is no God, why are you so mad at him? Right? But that's kind of what I was, because I had all these things taken from me, and I had tried, church. I had tried, all these different spiritual paths, and they came up empty. There's my bitterness, right? You guys promised me something, and it's not there. It's not real. And so it changed my relationship to myself, to other people, to the divine. And it was just a different way of being. Another change that I noticed is before psychedelics, I was such a control freak. I wanted to control everything. And life rewards us for that sometimes. The military actually really liked me being a control freak. That was helpful for the mission. But afterwards, it almost became like this surrendered life of, oh, well, I wonder what will happen next. I wonder what's going to unfold from this. Just this kind of curious, optimistic, the universe is going to take care of me attitude that was very different from before, where like, I need to control everything because I know better than everybody else. I know how the world should be run. I know how my wife should be behaving. I know what my kids should do. Like, control, control, control. And afterwards, it's like, you know what? Life unfolds as it unfolds. I don't need to be in control of everything. And actually, maybe I'm not in control of anything. I don't control my heart beating. I don't control my digestion. I don't even know if I control the thoughts that come into my head. Maybe it's all just happening and God is living through me. So I wasn't looking for a spiritual connection or answer in the psychedelic journey, but I did find it. I just wanted relief from depression, and instead I got some new spirituality. And damn it, maybe those two things are very, very related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There was always in a meeting with some spiritual dude from Iceland named Tolle, and he said he ended up in our mastermind group by saying just like, the state war is over, I'm coming home. Uh-huh. As in, like, when you have been in the war inside your head, and then you have these blissful moments of like, wow, and just fully surrender. And then life is so magical and beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think so, like, getting a little bit of that, like, every day. But then also, like, when you go back into your head, you're like, what happened? Like, I want to always be in that state.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, like, the integration part of the meaning making, like, how was it? Was it like more from like seems to be like more from a curiosity perspective afterwards of like, how did these information come to you? Did you just snap your finger and you started to, the psychedelic allowed you to change your perspective? Or was there an active meaning making of like being interested in how you were viewing the world? Like, how how much did the trip change you versus like the past afterwards?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I notice a lot of people will go off and have very profound psychedelic experiences, maybe over a weekend or maybe, at a retreat. And then very quickly, on Monday, they're right back where they were. They're, going to work and getting stressed out by the kids, and maybe, the spouse is nagging them, and they get kind of like sucked right back into the old life, and they don't have the space or the opportunity to integrate and to bring that magic back into their life. And I think that's often why profound changes don't happen after psychedelic experiences. So without integration, without bringing those lessons into your life, maybe you just had an interesting experience and not a transformation. Nothing wrong with an interesting experience, but if you're looking for transformation, there absolutely is work to do. So I was extremely fortunate after my first psychedelic experience, maybe more fortunate than anybody I know, because I came home and my relationship was already falling apart. And after psychedelics, it completely fell apart. So within a few days, I went off to a place that I had in the woods overlooking a lake, off-season vacation town. And I spent over a month basically alone in the woods over this lake with nobody around. And I spent every day integrating. And the heart of that was actually journaling, handwriting all of the lessons that came from the journey, all of the implications of that, a lot of affirmations. And it was almost like I was given 30 days to brainwash myself. So my mind was cleared by the psychedelics, like it had just gone through a car wash. And now there's like a blank slate there. The technical term for that is neuroplasticity, where after psychedelics, your brain becomes a little more like a child's, where it can be very impressionable. So in that period, negative stuff is especially bad because you're brainwashing yourself with negative information. But if you can take that opportunity to kind of reprogram yourself in a positive way, I think that's magic. So I had 30 days of writing in my journal about, love and forgiveness and who is the kind of person I want to be. I want to be creative. I want to be connected. I want to be joyful. I'm running through a bunch of spiritual books. I'm reading Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie and Rumi and everything. And I'm writing down quotes from them that are hitting my heart. I'm watching a bunch of YouTube videos from like Alan Watts. Like it was this opportunity to completely reprogram my brain. And so I took a month alone with no responsibilities and no people around me to completely reprogram myself. And maybe reprogram's a better word than brainwashing, but I kind of like the word brainwashing because that's what it felt like. My brain had been through a car wash, or more accurately, maybe my heart had been through a car wash. So that continued even after that 30 days. Months later, in my bathroom on the mirror, I actually would write these affirmations with a black marker on my mirror. So every time I went in to shave or wash my hands, I'm seeing, these words, I can't even remember what they were, but whatever, I'm loving, I'm divine, I'm strong, I'm, creative, like whatever it was that I was trying to, become. Here is the reminders. We're always getting programmed. We're getting programmed maybe by, what we're looking at on Instagram or, the conversations we're having with our friends. Like all of this is programming us. So what if we did it deliberately? What if we deliberately reprogrammed ourselves to become the optimal Benjamin in my case? So when I work with clients, while I wish they could all have a month after their psychedelic experience to go do what I did, they can't. And so we try to carve out in their life at least some time for just them, some time to take, what it was out of the journey that they need to do. So that first integration was big. Sometimes the integration is actually a lot more simple. My second psychedelic experience, the integration was very simple. I came out of the 5-hour journey and I pulled out my notebook and I wrote down the names of about 10 people that I needed to apologize to, my apology tour. And so over, the next couple months, I reached out to all these people and tried to make amends for what I felt I needed to. So sometimes it's that simple. I had another experience last year with ayahuasca where I came out of it and I'm like, there's a surgery I've been putting off. I need to go do it. So it could be a month of reprogramming your brain and how you approach life and the universe and yourself. It could be, I need to go make amends to this specific person. I need to go get this surgery. For some people, it can be meditation and yoga. I'm not against those things, but for me, integration now, it's just, how am I going to live? And maybe it's that simple.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it seems to be the case that psychedelics show you exactly what you need and want to work on if you allow it.
If you allow it, I'll share one little anecdote from a client of mine. So I had a client who did psilocybin, and he came out of it with one really clear lesson. There was a person in his life who was toxic to him, and the message was, you need to withdraw from that person. They are not good for your happiness. And unfortunately, that person is still very much a part of their life. So just because we're given, like, here's the answer, it's not going to automatically happen. We actually have to do something with it.
Yeah, difference between insights and action, basically. And that's a common human problem, I would say. Like, we all know that we should eat certain type of food, not look at our phone before sleeping, but still, like, we're this human element where we do it.
Of course.
And same thing with, like, good things. We know about, if I would meditate, for example, I know I will be, like, my mind will be healthier, but then we don't do it. So I think that's a common, it was one challenge that I was obsessed with at some part of my life. Like, how do we do that we know it's true? Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you about because it seemed to me, all the way up until the military, you, and maybe this is the question I'll come to, you still have the certain aspect of being in the military that is discipline, having a goal, being determined of finding solutions, work ethic, all of that. You seem to still have that. So what part of the military identity did you have to burn off? And what parts of you did you continue to leverage in your own life? Because I relate to this as a professional soccer player when I was just like, I basically abandoned the box I'm in. So as a soccer player, you need to be not saying anything you shouldn't say. You should say a lot, but there shouldn't be any meaning behind it. Should be a particular persona. You live in a bubble. You can't say something controversial. You can't show emotions. You just have to boil that all down. But there's part of me being a soccer player. Oh my God, resilience, working with people, determination, goal setting, work ethic, treating my mind and my body like an athlete. Everything that I took to me in the PhD and all the stuff I'm doing today. So my question is, I'm curious, what parts of the military identity did you have to burn off? And which one did you, like, leverage into your new pursuit in life?
That's a wonderful question. So there were definitely things that I had to burn off. I think the first thing was that cookie cutter role that I had to be. As my transformation was starting, the first manifestation of throwing off the military shackles actually was physical appearance. When I knew that my career was ending, that's when I went into the tattoo parlor and started my full sleeves, because military officers typically do not have full sleeve tattoos. So that was the first part. And then after the retirement ceremony, then came the beard, and then came the hair. Because, for 25 years, I'm told your hair is going to look like this, you're going to be clean shaven, and you're fitting this little role. So the physical thing was the first transformation. And the second thing probably was the control freak nature that I talked about. Like, shedding that control freak was really important, because that guy was actually making me pretty miserable. When you're trying to control everything, you can never actually just relax and enjoy life. And I think also, like, the emotional stoicism of being in the military. Like, I could not show any, doubt, weakness, fear, as a military leader. But no, those things are actually happening in there, and they need some expression. So what is that? The physical experience, the stoicism, the control freaky stuff, like, that all needed to go. And the further I get away from the military experience in life, the more I can see what the military gave to me, so that I can bring into this space. That sense of mission is definitely one. Courage. I talked before the podcast, my first tattoo was on my hand, and it was the word courage, and I was about to join the military. So I thought at the time I'm talking about physical courage, right? But it got transmuted in psychedelics. It's actually, I think, about emotional courage, about going in and facing those things inside myself that are actually a little scary. So the sense of courage, the sense of mission there. The physicality of the military as well. I was not an athlete as a teenager at all, but in the military, it's like, okay, I need to learn how to run, do pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and become, a physical athletic being because that's part of the job. And I have been surprised over and over again that psychedelics are extremely physical. I don't necessarily get all the visual eye candy a lot of people get in psychedelics, but my body wants to move. So the physical aspect of it. And also I notice more and more there is an organized way of thinking in the military that has been extremely helpful. Somebody will ask me, so what did you get out of the ayahuasca ceremony last weekend? Okay, so 3 things. First this, and then this. Because the military trained me right away, 3. 3 is as much as the human mind can handle. That's the perfect number of points to make. And so just like I was standing in front of a general at the Pentagon giving him my 3 points, now I'm telling a friend asking about ayahuasca ceremonies, here's the 3 points. Try to package things in this organized, digestible way. And finally, like as I'm on this mission trying to, preach the good news of psychedelics, the military helped me again, because one of the first things the military taught me is how do I get up in front of a crowd of people and communicate clearly and genuinely and, inspirationally. And so, the military helped make me a good public speaker. And now as I go around trying to spread the good word, I'm like, that was really helpful as well. The other thing, the last thing I'll mention on the military habits, and this one's a double-edged sword, it's awareness of time. I am constantly aware of what time it is and if I'm running late or if I'm going to be early. And I have not been able to shed that. It's not entirely a bad thing, but when I do a psychedelic ceremony is probably the only time I remove my wristwatch. It's a symbolic thing. I'm taking off my watch, I'm taking away this control, and I'm throwing it over there and abandoning myself to the medicine. I don't need to know what time it is 2 hours into an ayahuasca journey. I want to, but I need to let that go. It's just another aspect of control.
Yeah. I think you mentioned, because when you're no longer doing the thing you used to do, it's like you don't have to burn everything about it. There's so many underlying characteristics that are good with your former role or your former identity, and like that helps you. And I think everybody should define themselves as their human being, not like as what they do, because like when you face those transitions, which we can get into, I think that's the most vulnerable part when you leave the military, right? For like, because it's so tough, like who am I without it, and save the soccer and sports and everything. But I do think that if you incorporate and define the good quality aspects of it, they still serve you in other roles in your life, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when I first left the military and I had my psychedelic experience, it was like I was divorcing myself. I don't want anything to do with military band. Like, unfortunately, like when I left behind all of my military uniforms, trophies and medals that I'd worn. Like, I wanted to just completely throw aside this old version of Benjamin and just be free and be gone. And in the years since, I'm like, oh my God, that's just another form of self-rejection. And I wound up talking to a therapist about that, and he led me through this mental exercise. He said, no, imagine yourself as you are today. You're walking into a coffee shop and you're waiting in line, and you notice there's a guy in front of you, and he's about exactly your height, and he's wearing a Air Force uniform, you can tell from the back. Now tap him on the shoulder and have him turn around. And who turns around was, Military Ben. That's my name for that part of myself. And so look into the eyes of Military Ben as you are today. What do you have to say to him? And my reaction was to kind of tear up and throw my arms around him and say, thank you. Because that bastard kind of saved my life. And I wouldn't be who I am without him. And damn it, he was disciplined. He was hardworking. He was a leader. And, thank God he was pretty good with money, because he left this new version of Benjamin with enough of a nest egg to go around and, preach psychedelics. Like, he did so much good for me. It's not the entirety of who I am, but if I reject him, I'm rejecting myself. And so I need to embrace military Ben, just like I need to embrace, the childhood version of Ben. Like all of those parts of me are me. And the minute I'm rejecting any one of them, including military Ben, I'm rejecting myself. And rejecting yourself is a pretty guaranteed path to misery.
Yeah, it seems to be in a form of acceptance or being welcoming towards your past self, and then work on burning the parts of you that don't serve you anymore, but also celebrating yourself. Like I was driven by being not enough for years. And but like, instead of saying to myself, like, of course I changed my belief, so I'm doing the best I can, instead of I'm not good enough, which definitely helped. But also just accepted that this was a big part of my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I accepted it, it was kind of just like freeing. And I was grateful for that part, instead of being like, I shouldn't feel like that. And then I had more control over it. And then over the course of the next years, I reinforced a new belief. And today, not being enough doesn't come often up, but it still is a small part of me. And sometimes it comes, which is interesting and a curious perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it's definitely like not rejecting your whole self, but welcoming the parts and facing them, because you can't understand them unless you face them, and just burying them down and seeing what kind of perspective you can get on it. When was the moment when you realized, like we spoke about earlier, like this is my problem or interest and I want to give it to the world? Like what because you went in all kinds of ceremonies, and I want to ask you, like, what was the most craziest experience? But first, like, when did you realize, like, oh, this is like, I got something and I want to like scream out to the world what this has done me and give this gift to the world?
Immediately. The very weekend I was first exposed to plant medicine, I knew this was my calling. I turned to the psychologist who was leading the ceremony and I said, this is the most interesting thing in the world. I need to be a part of this somehow. And that same weekend, I remember sitting and talking to one of the other participants, and I could see back in my mind that my brain was working on the book. I had always wanted to be a writer since I was a child. And so as I'm having a conversation, part of my brain back there was working on the opening line of the book. The opening line from that first weekend was, she handed me a cup of tea and life was never the same again. So I actually knew as soon as the medicine left my body that this was my calling. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. But yeah, that impulse to go shout from the rooftops that like, this is really important, was immediate. And so my initial thought through conversations months after the journey was to go become a therapist. So I actually applied to and was accepted into a college to study to be a therapist. And after one semester, I quit. And I quit because it felt very evident to me that I knew more about psychedelics than my teachers. And if I'm going to learn about psychedelics, I don't think these are the people who can teach me about it. I also felt a certain calling to work specifically with men, because I think there's a lot of work to be had there. And I noticed in this particular school, frankly, a deep hostility towards men and towards masculinity. Like, well, this is not going to be helpful in connecting with men to be surrounded by hostility towards men. So I want to work with psychedelics. I think I'm going to go be a therapist. I try that out for a semester and go like, nope, that's not it. And then I next went into coaching. I started holding space for people in psychedelics and helping them prepare for and integrate. And then the book kept nagging at me. And so the book came out there. And now I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to do public speaking and advocacy. You know, my military background brings a certain amount of, credibility that people on the left or right will listen to. But to answer your question, like, when did you know that this was going to be your work and your calling? Immediately. I knew I couldn't do it right away. I needed to integrate and sort myself out and figure out, okay, where's the avenue for me to go? But when something that miraculous like hits you, it just becomes obvious. So there is no doubt in my mind, and has not been for over 5 years, that this is my work. This is my calling. This is what I was born for.
That's beautiful. I read your book. It's fantastic. Really helpful to understand both what they can do on a personal level, and then you're super vulnerable. And also there's 10 stages, and also 3 stages: preparation and experience and integration. It's really, really beneficial. And I think I remember correctly that there was some crazy experience with 5-MeO DMT, right?
Yes.
Yes. Is that, or maybe before assuming that's
Sure.
your biggest, like, what is your craziest experience? What were you taking, and how was that?
I mean, the craziest experience, I think, is always going to be the first one, because it blew my mind and life apart in a beautiful way. And since then, I've gone and I've explored almost everything. Ayahuasca has been a really profound medicine for me. I have a deep relationship with that. San Pedro, this cactus that grows all over California, is delightful. But I think the most powerful, mind-blowing medicine in existence is 5-MeO DMT. For anybody who may not know the origin of 5-MeO DMT, I'll tell a little bit about it. A lot of these medicines like ayahuasca, magic mushrooms, San Pedro, those have been around for centuries and centuries, and there are indigenous spiritual traditions built around them. 5-MeO is different. There's no ancient history of 5-MeO as best we know. It seems that this medicine was discovered sometime in the last 100 years, maybe even in my lifetime. And 5-MeO DMT is this molecule that is found inside the venom of the Sonoran desert toad. And I don't know who figured this out, but if you squirt that venom onto a surface, you dry it out, you scrape it off, and you smoke it at a certain temperature, it provides the most profound psycho-spiritual experience that I think is available to man. So just in the last, 50-ish years, we have discovered the most profound psychedelic out there in nature in a really bizarre way. So what is the experience of 5-MeO like? So typically it lasts 10 to 20 minutes. And it's the only medicine I've ever taken that will provide an experience of ego death. Ego death is when your sense of self just kind of evaporates. Your awareness remains, but there is no self. So the first time I had a breakthrough with 5-MeO, I inhaled and there was no even ability to resist. It just overtook me and I fell back. And I found myself in this place of just endless white light and bliss and eternal pure awareness. And there was no Benjamin. Like, my identity was gone. My physical body was gone. I just simply was existence. And in that place, everything was perfect. And I came out of this experience just 10 minutes later, and I ran around just like hugging everybody in awe of existence. And I remember saying, oh my God, that's what the Buddha was talking about. No self, no problem. No Benjamin, and everything's perfect. Not every 5-MeO experience is like that, but I think that crystallizes how powerful that particular molecule is. So that was my first breakthrough with 5-MeO. Years later, I went to Enfold in Vancouver, Canada, and that I talk about in chapter 10, where I did 5-MeO, and they do it a unique way. They give you an intermuscular injection of it, and then they have you inhale, and so that 10-minute experience becomes like 30. And the experience I describe in the book, I again lost my ego, but this time I lost awareness as well. And so a half hour later, I don't know what happened. I just disappeared. And I haven't found any other medicine that can simply make me disappear. And that experience of losing the self can be very frightening to some people. I've seen people have, frightening experiences on 5-MeO. But if you're willing to let go of yourself and not exist for a little while, it's actually maybe the most beautiful experience there is. I don't think ego death is the right term. The guy who runs Enfold, Steve Rio, he prefers ego nap because it's less scary, but also it's more accurate. So yes, you have this experience where your ego is gone and you will often experience, divine, infinite love and bliss. But when you come out of the experience, very quickly, the ego comes back together. Like we actually need an ego to exist in this world. So ego nap is a better idea. And who doesn't want an ego nap once in a while? It's pretty exhausting being a human sometimes. And so what's the point of that experience? What's the point of having this mind-blowing, ego-dissolving reality getting ripped apart for 10 minutes? What's the point of that? I think it can have a lot of value for different people. For me, though, it really took away the fear of death. Because when there's no Benjamin and everything is perfect, well, what am I so afraid of? And I don't want to die. I'm having way too much fun. And my mission continues. So I'm not ready yet. But the idea of not existing in this form actually doesn't scare me anymore. I think what's on the other side might be a lot more beautiful than what we're experiencing right here.
That's beautiful. Accepted it maybe. In terms of you said you need ego and this switch between human being mode and human doing mode, and having the ego and analytical and rational brain, and then the heart and intuition and just being. How do you navigate that now in terms of how you live your life? Because for me, it seems to be like a switch where you switch on and off, and the better that you are switching on and off, the better it is for your life. Because I could be on the mountain meditating the whole day, but eventually, we are dancing with society and we are playing this game or whatever you want to call it. So it's playing the game, but also being the spiritual person. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, beautiful question. I think the way I would look at it is around action and surrender. So prior to psychedelics, I was all about action and control. And then after psychedelics, I was in a complete place of complete surrender. So here's a version of Benjamin that's trying to control everything and do, act. And then I do this complete 180, and for a few years just lived in a place of total surrender. I'm just going to let everything unfold and life will just happen as it happens, and I'm not going to control anything. And then I think about a year and a half ago, there was another shift where that control and action and that surrender and inaction kind of morphed into a new way of being, where surrender and action is kind of happening at the same time. So I still, am acting and doing, like I'm writing the book, I'm showing up to podcasts, I have very specific things that I want to do to fulfill my mission. And yet I'm going about it in a way of complete surrender, where I know it's going to take its own twists and turns. It's not going to go the way I think it will exactly. And so to be able to act and be surrendered at the same time, I think that is integration, because I was totally overboard on the action prior to psychedelics. After I experienced psychedelics, maybe I went overboard for a while on the surrender. And then it became time to put those two things together into surrendered action. In that 3 phases that I'm talking about in my life, I think actually are also the perfect metaphor for approaching psychedelics. So as we're preparing for a psychedelic journey, that's our time of action. We're researching the medicine, who we're going to be doing it with. We're, checking out, okay, what medications are we on? Are there any counterindications? We're making maybe travel plans. There's a lot of action going on there. But once you get to the medicine, you got to let all that stuff go and just hurl yourself into the abyss of the psychedelic experience. So you did your action in preparation, you're surrendering completely in navigation, and then afterwards, integration. Integration is surrendered action. I am taking these beautiful lessons of the universe and of the psychedelics, and I'm bringing them into my life. I'm bringing them into my life in real, tangible, concrete ways. So I think that's the yin and yang that unfolded in my life. And I also think it's the yin and yang that ideally is happening when people approach psychedelics.
Mm-hmm. It seems to be also, I haven't finished the Surrender Experience by Mikkel Singer, but that seems to be like, it still talks about will and action, but it talks about surrendering to whatever comes and having like a curiosity perspective and like, oh, interesting, that's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that book by Michael Singer, The Surrender Experiment, I read that after The Untethered Soul at the suggestion of my therapist. He said, well, you love Untethered Soul. Have you ever read The Surrender Experiment? I said, no idea what that is. And he said, well, that's the memoir of the guy who wrote it. And you should read it, Benjamin, because I think that's how you're living. And so I think Michael Singer's a fascinating person because he had this awakening experience back in the early 70s. And everything was just kind of magic for him. It all just like unfolded. But he's not just some celibate monk living on a hill, not interacting with anybody. He starts learning software and he becomes interested in, how can software, help the medical world? And he winds up being, I forget his exact role with the WebMD software, but no, he becomes kind of a tech guy and makes millions and millions of dollars. And the government investigates him and he's found innocent and everything. So it's not like he's not out there in the world. It's not like he's not out there making money, but he's also living in this place of bliss and surrender and, building a church in Florida and everything. So like we can do both, and God damn it, we should do both. I don't think that we're necessarily meant to just sit here and live in a perfect state of enlightenment. No. We're here to get our hands dirty and go out and do some shit. So if somebody's only living in the material world and only pursuing wealth, like I think that's a pretty empty life, and eventually they're going to find that out. And, if somebody's only concerned about the spiritual stuff and they're ignoring, what they can contribute to the world, well, I think that's a mistake too. Like I think those two things ideally, merge together.
Yeah, and coexists.
Yeah.
And one solution is to make action and being surrendered to the action, but then it's just holding those two polar opposites in, that's the most, Carl Jung says, that's the most spiritual possession, is like being able to hold opposite poles simultaneously without needing to, sometimes you get a crystal clear answer. But I feel like when you have gotten to one answer, like, I should just be spiritual and lose myself in something else, then you have another problem. Like, I'm also a human being and I need to like make a living and I need to do all of that. But then it's like, oh, okay, that's another problem. And then like, okay, if I go full into human doing mode, then I'm not being mode. But so it's like, it's not about finding the solution, I think. I think it's more about holding two opposites at the same time while you move through the world.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe you can drop into, because about the holding two opposites in terms of the heart or the brain, or the military officer and the human being, and masculinity and femininity in some sense. It seems to me like before, when you were in the military, you were like masculine and you were like, sort of like your masculine season in your life. But it seems to me that then spirituality opens you up a little bit more, the feminine side and the emotion and the intuition. And it seems to me, I'm looking at here with all the tattoos, with the hair, and talking about like being in tune with your intuition, but also like doing stuff and having ego. Like what? And you say famously in the book, and the famous line is, most men live of quiet desperation. What is an integrated man today?
Ooh, that's a good question. So that's the second book. I'm writing a trilogy. The second book is around masculinity and psychedelics. So I think it's the most important thing going on in the world right now. I think the confusion around what it is to be a man today is playing out on a world stage. And so many men are lonely and lost and confused. And so many women are frankly frustrated because they're not finding the healthy masculinity that a lot of them actually want. And so I lived most of my life, I think, overdosing on the masculine. There probably isn't a more masculine profession in the world than, being in the military. And it very much is about shutting down, the heart and doing what has to be done, which can be a beautiful thing in the right moment. But I was so overdosed on that I couldn't even feel. And I was locked down and I wasn't a full human being. And I think after psychedelics, like the pendulum swung the other direction. And I'm always like, navigating my feelings and, delving into like psychology and exercises. And I'm not worried about making money or, accomplishing anything in the world. I'm just existing in this kind of like, beautiful passive place. And it's like I needed to spend time there for a while because I spent so much time on the other. And then after a while, it's like, okay, that's out of balance too. And so I need to get back like in balance, where I can act and be strong and be a leader in this world, but also realize, there's emotions and feelings going on here, and I need to bring those out in the open and process them in a healthy way. So as I'm approaching this new book, my target audience is men, and I'm being very careful about the language that I'm using in there, because I think if we tell men to get in touch with their feminine side, I think we've just lost half the audience. I think about like the men that I served with in the military. If I was standing up in front of them talking about some of the stuff we're talking about now, the minute I encourage them to get in touch with their feminine side, I think I've lost them. And so the phrase that I'm using instead is let's be a full fucking human being. Because I think little boys feel just as much as little girls, if not more. But they aren't given the space to have those feelings and to process that. And so how do we move as men in the world today? We talked beforehand, like, on the left, I think I'll start on the right. On the right, there is this kind of performative masculinity where it's kind of about pickup trucks and guns and never crying and, all these kind of like, stereotypes of masculinity that actually look kind of insecure to me. And then on the left, there can be this tendency for this kind of apologetic, timid masculinity that's been very shamed. And I think it must be so confusing growing up as a young man today. Like, where is the healthy masculine role model that we can look to? I don't actually see a lot of them. There's some of them out there. Thank you, Scott Galloway. So I think a lot of that confusion comes in response to feminism. And I'm very grateful for, the progress that women have made, especially, in the West, and the opportunities that they have. I think all of that is goodness. All of it is goodness, but it's thrown men off balance, and suddenly they don't know how to operate. And I don't think feminism was ever asking men to stop being manly or to stop being strong and courageous or a provider or protector. No, they just want to feel safe and respected while we're doing it. And so I think there is a model of masculinity where, we are providers, we are protectors, we are procreators, and we can be proud of how we show up as men in this world. But we also, need to be emotionally intelligent and not suppress these parts of ourselves. I don't think those parts of ourselves are feminine. I don't think that, crying or expressing feelings is inherently feminine. I think it's human. And it's not necessarily going to happen the same way it does for women. Like, I think for a man approaching a feeling of fear or grief, I think the way we approach it can be differently. It can be different. And so the metaphor I use is built on a quote from Joseph Campbell. In the cave you fear to enter is the treasure that you seek. So when I am like going into my heart, like that's how I feel about it. Okay, I'm going to go into a cave and I'm going to face the dragon and I'm going to get the treasure. This isn't me sitting in the corner, a crying, weeping mess, begging for help. No, this is a warrior going into my heart to see what's there. And maybe what I find in my heart is like, oh, there's a grief there. There's that grief of my father dying. I need to go feel that pain. That's not feminine. That's a fucking warrior. And so I think there can be a warrior mentality fostered around going into the heart and understanding, feelings and expressing them and allowing them to have space. I think most of our psychological problems, most of our emotional problems today are caused by unfelt feelings. The feeling is like this entity inside us, and its only purpose is to be felt. And if you don't feel it, it's not going to go away. It's going to be a gremlin nagging at you from the inside until it gets its time on stage. And so psychedelics can be a way to let those feelings come out and get on stage and get expressed. And hopefully we're skillful enough after psychedelics, maybe without psychedelics, to express that stuff in a manly way. So I think the world is hungry for healthy, strong, emotionally intelligent men. From the female friends that I talk to, they are hungry for that kind of man. So it's not about abandoning old rules of provider, protector, procreator. I mean, that's who we're supposed to be in this world, I think. But it needs to be rooted in security, and it needs to be rooted in a genuine sense of self. And I think we men have gotten so lost in our heads and in our bodies that we have forgotten about the heart. And if we start thinking of the heart as a feminine place, I think we can get confused. I think going into the heart can be a very manly thing. I was talking on another podcast recently, and I said, that stoic man who's like just being torn up inside by grief or fear is like, nope, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I got this. I'm in control. That man's actually the coward. The courageous man who's the one who's actually goes, God damn, I'm hurting right now. That breakup fucking ripped me apart. I really got to look at myself. And the podcast host, Jake, he said, I tried an experiment. I tried an experiment with the men in my life, and I would go and express my emotions to them, but I would do it in a manly way. So if his buddy were to ask, hey, how you doing today? He's like, oh my God, I am so fucking stressed out. I am trying so fucking hard to provide for my wife and kids, but man, it is driving me fucking nuts. I want to go like punch the wall right now. Does that sound girly? No. Does it sound like a man who's repressing his emotions? No. It sounds like a man who's expressing his emotions in a manly way. And probably that other guy is going to receive it better than if Jake showed up as a whiny little crying mess in the corner. Maybe there's a moment to be that mess, but yeah. And also in relationship to women too, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of men in our culture make is the only close, intimate relationship they have is with their girlfriend or their wife. And if that's the only close relationship that they have, then that's too much burden to put on the girlfriend or wife. And also, it can turn your lover into your therapist, and your lover doesn't want to be a therapist. So I think for men to be healthy in the heart, to be healthy around their emotions and feelings means having a cast of characters around you that can hold space for you in a healthy way. That you have, male friends you can talk to about what you're going through, female friends that you can talk to, maybe a therapist or coach or, somebody else. Because otherwise it's too much burden on the woman in your life. You got to spread that shit around.
Yeah, I think on average it's more difficult for men to overcome, for example, a breakup because they haven't built the social structure around them, because they put that all on the woman. But the woman is way more quickly to recover because she is talking to a lot of people and has those connections. Mm-hmm. The man is most often following her plans and doing with her friends and everything, just fully locked into that bucket. I think it's so interesting what you said, how you changed the perspective on on being courageous, because like, yeah, one masculinity is being strong. You know, then I think about being strong. Okay, yeah, physically strong. Yeah, okay, emotionally strong. But what does emotionally strong mean? That doesn't mean they bury down your feelings. No. That means you fucking face your feelings.
Exactly.
Because that is strength. And then express it and decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
And that, I think that is where, because I generally do like the concept of stoicism in a sense. But I do think the message should be, it's perfectly fine to have feelings.
Yeah.
Experience them, maybe express them, or choose how to express them. And that means sometimes that if I experience anger, if I'm mindful of that, somebody was probably crossing my boundaries, and I'm going to say something. Yeah. Or like I'm feeling sad. Okay, I'm feeling sad. Okay, wow, yeah. It's because I feel this craving of being connected with another human being. Yeah, I'm going to call my friends or whatever. But like the strength is not neglecting your emotions. It's facing them and then mindfully choosing what to do with them.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. One of the metaphors, I'm using it in the new book. Maybe I used it in the old one, but it's suggesting to men that they think of their feelings as indicator lights on the dashboard of their car. So if I'm driving along and the little like oil light comes up, like, oh, there's something I need to attend to. Oh, wiper fluid. Okay, I need to stop and attend to that. So I think the human feelings are simply those indicator lights. So like you said, like I'm feeling anger. Well, very likely somebody is taking advantage of you or disrespecting you, and you need to deal with that in some way. Not in an out of control way, but that's a little indicator something's wrong. Loneliness. Okay, I need to go connect with somebody or be around people right now. Grief. Like, I lost, a friend or a family member, and I need to honor that and give that some space. And so these things, these emotions that are coming up, they're just trying to help us. They're just little like warning lights inside of us saying this needs to be attended to. Yeah.
And what would you say to a man that is listening, a young man or the older man that is just like, I don't know how to do this, and I disagree, and like I'm just going to be strong and show nothing of myself. Like I would just say that is on the opposite end, not the opposite end. What's the result of connecting with the emotions and then expressing them in a healthy way?
Yeah, so I think it depends on, where the person's at. If somebody is completely locked down and completely unable to feel, I think it can require something extreme, because that's how I was. Like if I was able to get there through therapy or a self-help book, like I would have done it. Like I tried that. So for me, it took something radical. It took something like a massive dose of psychedelics for me to open my heart. So for a man who can't access feelings, I don't know of a better route than psychedelics. If psychedelics aren't a possibility for somebody, there are certain somatic exercises that can be extremely helpful. And then, on the lighter end, if somebody is able to access those feelings, then, probably just talking to a therapist or a friend or journaling can be enough. But it sounds like the sort of like theoretical man you're talking about is a little bit more like I was, in which case, I think psychedelics are probably the most direct path, into those feelings, into the heart. I will say though, at the end of the day, psychedelics are just a tool. There's other ways to get there. So we talked a little bit about my first experience with plant medicine and how transformational that was for me. The second most transformational experience of my life actually involved no psychedelics whatsoever. I went to this place called the Hoffman Institute. They've been around for decades, and their core program is basically therapy boot camp. It's 7 days. They take away your phone. You're not supposed to exercise, and you spend the whole day processing through all of your childhood stuff and doing so in a somatic way. I don't want to give away too much of what they do, but there was one exercise, like maybe 4 or 5 days in, and they had us write down all of the patterns from mom and dad that, we felt had hurt us in our lives. And they said, okay, now take the baseball bat next to those patterns that are laid out in a pillow and smash that pillow for 45 minutes. And when they suggested, I'm like, are you kidding? I'm supposed to take a bat and hit a pillow for 45 minutes? Are you nuts? Like, I'm going to get bored after 3 minutes. And God damn it, when the 45 minutes was up, I was like, I can't believe how quick that went. And so here's why I think therapy often doesn't work for people. It's all up here. And it can become this intellectual exercise of admiring the problem, which, can be helpful. But it's not as if I didn't know what was wrong with me. But just like the book, The Body Keeps the Score tells us, it doesn't necessarily matter what's going on up here. Like the trauma can be like in our bodies. And so that physical release of, beating on the pillow or pounding the chest or releasing that physically, I think that's how the emotions can get out. So for somebody who's really locked down, I think psychedelics are probably the ideal answer. I don't know of a more certain path than that. If psychedelics are not a possibility for somebody for various reasons, I think somatic experiences of release through things like the Hoffman Institute or holotropic breathwork can be like another way. So a lot of ways to get there, but damn it, I am still convinced that psychedelics are the most important and powerful discovery in the history of psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just at the dawn of it. We're scratching the surface.
Yeah. I'm a trained psychologist, but I study coaching and positive psychology, which is studying not what's wrong with people, but what's right with people, not suffering, what constitutes flourishing, how we can increase your well-being. So it's a little bit change of awareness of how we address. We don't talk about even problems, but of course people have problems. But what I'm realizing that I think this world of the somatic and targeting in the body is kind of neglected in that field. But it seems to be like what I'm realizing is like a bottom to top processing rather than always just top to down. So what do I mean by that? Bottom to top is that your nervous system and your body is too, like, you can't access it, so you have to open that. But when you open that, you seem to gain access to a greater meaning making. Mm-hmm. But the vice versa can also be true. There's a literature on expressive writing by James Pennebaker, and people who write for 3 days for 50 minutes on the most traumatic experience of their life, leaving all the emotions and thoughts on the table, feel terrible in the moment, of course. Yeah. But they reduce the cortisol, then hence their immune system, and have fewer doctor visits as we go on. But it seems to be not be either or. And what I'm getting introduced now is more of the body parts. It seems to be an interactive process, and that seems to grab your psychedelic trip in a sense, like you're expressing in your body, but then you got some insights and downloads that you do meaning making of. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. I don't know what I expected exactly when I first experienced psychedelics. Like, I thought it would be, I don't know, a bunch of, eye candy, and I'd be having conversations with God. Like, I don't know what I thought, but it was almost like an alignment of every aspect of the individual is getting impacted. So up here, there are downloads and revelations that are happening. And in the heart, there is emotions and feelings getting burst out. And then the part that shocked me is my entire body was involved. I am, I'm beating my chest. I'm maybe moving around and I'm shaking a little bit. I might be like dancing or something. And when I came out of my first psychedelic experience, I found myself doing yoga poses. I don't do yoga. Maybe I'd done yoga at a few like fitness thing, whatever, but it was not my jam at all. And yet I find myself, okay, I'm stretching my spine. I'm like getting into child's pose. Like, I didn't think this would be so physical. And it's sort of like how I was talking earlier, like I was just looking for relief from depression. I was not looking for spirituality, and yet I found it. So God damn it, the mind, the heart, the movement of the body, the spirituality, is it all just the same damn thing? Maybe it's not the same damn thing, but it's all very interconnected. And I think prior to psychedelics, I had approached mental health as like a intellectual exercise, the same way I would approach, doing a school assignment or a problem in the military. Like I thought this was an intellectual exercise. And it wasn't until I brought in the mind and the heart and the body and the spirituality that any real change could happen. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I'm unusual in that way. I think our culture and maybe humanity in general, there's this gravitational pull to the mind. And it takes psychedelics or some somatic exercise to kind of pull that attention and energy to the other places inside of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate what you're saying. I'm so interested in, because this sounds like a lot of work. People who listen who haven't done any work, they're like, what the, like, wow, let's just like think about everything that needs to happen. And like, I'm not doing that and all of that. And I'm guessing that although you had these experiences and you've done a lot of things like being in the woods for like a month, it's just like when you are getting into physical shape, you go to the gym, you can't just stop going to the gym and expect the muscles to keep grow or maintain. Yeah. You have to maintain it. Mm-hmm. So what is your process in terms of, because some people might think we see just this experience and we see Benjamin before and after, which we do. Mm-hmm. But I know Benjamin, with all of the military identity and stuff, he has done a lot of work and he's probably still up to this day of doing the work to maintain how you view the world, view yourself in your practice and everything.
Yeah. So it is a lot of work, but it's also a lot of play. Like, I go to ayahuasca ceremonies maybe every 3 to 4 months. And lately I have noticed, and I've even shared in the circle, like, I feel a little guilty because here I am in this ayahuasca circle and people are dealing with a lot of trauma. And I'm having a lot of fun and a lot of joy, like along with it too. And I actually will share that with them because I think it makes an interesting point. Trauma is not the destination. It is a necessary stop on the way to joyful living. But if we stick with this journey and deal with the difficult emotions and face the, traumas that maybe we've been avoiding, that's how we get to peace. That's how we get to joy. That's how we get to liberation. And so I think there can be an approach to it where it doesn't necessarily feel like work. And when it does feel like work, we can recognize that work is temporary and the destination on the other side is going to be becoming a more loving, joyful, on-purpose human being. So I guess we have an option then. We can stay in our present state, in our, perhaps quiet desperation and keep living the life we've always lived. Or we can look over and see this other path and God damn it, yeah, there's a swamp there, there's some caves there, but that path leads to bliss in heaven and this other path leads to more of the same. So I don't know. Do we want the adventure or do we want the status quo? Mm-hmm. And not everybody is, transformed by psychedelics like I was. I, have worked with dozens, God, I don't know, maybe even hundreds of people if I include folks I've just journeyed with. And I've seen every, possible outcome. I've seen people go into psychedelics and they did it in an irresponsible way. And maybe it even made their life like a little worse, like it destabilized them and they weren't able to patch it up. That does happen from time to time. I've seen other people who have done a bunch of psychedelic journeys and they don't seem to actually be any better. And then I've seen other people have definitely positive improvements in their life in various ways. And then I've seen, utter transformation. So what makes the difference between the person over here who's not impacted or maybe even a little negatively impacted or the people who utterly transform? I think the people who utterly transform are the people who have courage, who are really willing to be honest about themselves, about who they are, about what they've done, about what's going on inside of them. Those are the people that transform. There's a quote from Terence McKenna: "Nature loves courage. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under, it will lift you up. Throw yourself into the abyss and discover that it's a feather bed." And I think the people who can leap into psychedelics with that kind of courage and faith and fearlessness, I think those are the ones who transform. I think the people over here are the ones who are like going up to the cliff and then just not actually leaping. Or if they do leap, they go and like, they claw back onto it. Like they're not actually willing to like let go and face everything that they need to face. Circling back to the Joseph Campbell quote, "In the cave you fear to enter is the treasure that you seek." Here's how I view that metaphor. So here is the cave, and I don't know what's inside that cave for any individual. Maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's childhood trauma, who knows? The cave is always different. And so the individual goes bravely into the cave and there is a dragon. And I think we think that we need to pull out our sword and slay the dragon. But in the psychedelic space, we realize, oh, that dragon's actually just a part of me and it's just trying to help me. So the answer is to put the sword down, to walk up to the dragon, really look at it, really acknowledge it, and give it a fucking hug. And when you give the dragon a hug, it actually feels better and it just leaves. It just walks away. And oh, look, behind the dragon was some treasure. Dragon's gone. I guess that treasure's mine. And I'll use insecurity is a metaphor because I had one ayahuasca journey that was about this insecurity that was inside me. I didn't even know it was there, but childhood Ben was still very insecure. It didn't matter how much I accomplished in life as a man, childhood Ben was still insecure. So I go into that cave and I'm like, oh, I don't want to say that. I don't want to admit that. But like, yeah, here was this dragon of insecurity. And I went and gave it a hug and like, yeah, it made sense why, you know, the little child inside of me felt that. And so I hugged that dragon and sure enough, yeah, the dragon left and there was the treasure. And I picked up that treasure and I took it out of the cave. And you know what that treasure was? Security, right? That's the ironic thing. When you can go in there and acknowledge, oh, I feel insecure, suddenly there is security. I mean, that's the most secure thing you can do is admit you feel insecure, right? And so, you know, you go into a cave and like, oh, I feel hurt. Well, suddenly I don't hurt as much. You go into the cave and maybe there's some jealousy there. And if you can acknowledge it and hug that dragon of jealousy, suddenly you're a little less jealous. I think as complicated as this human mind is, I think when we're talking about emotional health, I think it might be that simple.
Simple but difficult.
Of course. Yeah. Well, because who wants to admit that shit?
Yeah, nobody.
Yeah.
Wow, that was beautiful. I want to close us up with that. So this is the part of that. I think actually, of course, it's scary to face yourself and do the work, but it also can be fun if you have an open and curious mindset to it. And I think a lot of people just need the tools and the courage to do it and be open to whatever happened. That's why I created this game called Unlock. It's a conversational game to open minds and hearts. And I played it a week ago with 40 people in Venice Beach, and they were strangers, complete strangers, put them in a group, and they were like, was unreal. So I want to just draw one question. What is the most important promise you ever made to yourself?
So that would go back to when I left the psych ward. I made the promise to myself that I would put myself first. I had spent my whole life sacrificing for others, sacrificing for my wife, sacrificing for my children, sacrificing for, you know, my troops, my country, the war, whatever it was. Like I was always putting myself second or third or fourth. And after the psych ward, I was like, okay, Benjamin, you are number one. I am looking after you first. And it felt like an audacious and maybe even selfish thing to do, to put myself first in that way, that my health and happiness is more important than anything in the universe right now. But the ironic thing was, the more I put my health and happiness as my highest priority, the better I was to everybody around me. The more I could show up for myself, taking care of myself, I'm a better friend, I'm a better son, I'm a better lover, I'm like a better at all of it. Because ironically, I decided to put my own health and happiness first. It's the best gift we can give to anybody else. And yeah, that strange little twist of selfishness is the most altruistic thing I think we can do for other people.
That's beautiful. Where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram at benjaminforrest.bliss. My website, benjaminforrest.com, is being revamped as we speak, but by the time this is released, it should hopefully be there. And the book, Trip of a Lifetime, The Psychedelic Guide to Healing, Loving, and Living, is available on Amazon. And my hope is by the time this is released, the audiobook will also be available. I listen to a lot more audiobooks than I read physical books, I admit it. So I felt that was important to get the audiobook out there. And I did it in my own voice, so you guys can experience all the imperfections of this guy talking for 4 hours.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I highly recommend the book. Read it in, I think, one setting because it was so interesting. Benjamin, I'm just so grateful that you didn't give up and then you kept going and then you turned your pain and your problem into this unique gift that you're giving all of your best to give to the world. So I'm just really grateful for you coming here today and learn from you and learn from how to integrate all this that we talked about. And I think you're a force for good in this world. So I'm just so grateful that we had this conversation and I'll continue to watch you flourish. So thank you so much for coming.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.